How I got into sailing, how I lost my career as a commercial pilot, how I ended up doing YouTube and all that. And so, like, a lot of people wanted to know. And I thought, why not record a podcast, and if you find this interesting, great. If not, maybe it's not the most interesting, but I think it's kind of some interesting stuff there. Bobby White became famous through his YouTube channel, Sailing Doodles, where he shared his journey from learning to sail to living full-time on the water. His easygoing personality and love for adventure made him a favorite in the sailing world. But life at sea wasn't always calm. Behind the stunning views were brutal storms, personal heartbreaks, and moments that nearly ended his life at sea. From triumphs and tragedies to shocking twists in his journey, Bobby's story is one few could have imagined. Join us as we explore what happened to Bobby White. But yeah, we really haven't talked much since. And single life I spent maybe a week by myself in Fort Pierce before we left and then sailed over by myself to the Bahamas and was in Walker's Key 4. Before anyone knew him as a sailor. Bobby White spent almost 20 years in the air. He flew corporate jets including the Gulfstream, transporting wealthy clients between international stops and luxury destinations. Dallas, Texas was where he called home, but the work rarely kept him there. Over the years, he logged more than 7,000 hours in the air and spent long stretches posted in places like Abuja, Nigeria, and Dubai. The schedule could be exhausting, but the steady money and constant travel kept his adrenaline up. However, everything changed in September 2015. Bobby woke up with what he figured was just a bad headache. When he tried texting his girlfriend, the words on his phone didn't seem to make sense. Thinking it would pass, he took some pills and tablets, which unknowingly made things worse, and tried to tough it out. His symptoms kept getting stranger, so he finally drove himself to urgent care. A CT scan confirmed what Bobby couldn't see coming. A hemorrhagic stroke had caused him serious brain damage. He was rushed by air to a hospital in Dallas, spending 11 days in the neuroscience intensive care unit, and undergoing 3 procedures just to stabilize him. His recovery process was slow and hard. Bobby had to relearn how to read, spending months training his brain to recognize letters again. And when it was all over, doctors told him something that hit harder than anything else. At 38, his medical certification to fly was gone for good. The career he'd built since he was young vanished in an instant. For a while, he didn't know what to do. Eventually, Bobby tried to pivot. Real estate looked like a natural path, especially since his mother worked in the field. But 8 months in, the pressure nearly broke him, and he walked away. Somewhere in that low point, he stumbled onto sailing channels on YouTube. Couples documenting life at sea suddenly filled his screen. The idea clicked. He'd always carried a dream of sailing around the world, a fantasy born from books he'd read growing up. Now everything in his life pointed toward a restart. So he made a choice. Bobby sold most of what he owned and bought a 1984 37-foot CNC sailboat called Rough Seas for $24,000. In October 2016, he left Galveston Bay with his 2 Labradoodles, Maverick and Goose, and started a YouTube channel. At first, the YouTube videos were a way to help cover expenses. Then, the audience grew and the adventure turned into something much bigger. That momentum carried into 2017. By the middle of the year, things were finally clicking for Bobby. Rough Seas had carried him out of Texas, across the Gulf, through the Florida Keys, and eventually toward the Bahamas and the U.S. Virgin Islands. The YouTube channel was slowly pulling in a modest income, just enough to cover groceries and repairs. People seemed to like the honesty of it all, the leaks, the constant fixes, and watching someone learn how to sail by doing it the hard way. He even had a buyer interested in taking the boat off his hands after that first year. It looked like things were finally going his way. Then, Hurricane Maria tore through Puerto Rico in September 2017. Bobby had left Rough Seas tied up there while he worked a delivery job. And when the storm rolled over the island with winds well over 100 miles per hour, the boat didn't stand much of a chance. The mast broke, the hull cracked, water poured into the cabin. When he returned, he saw the Rough Seas couldn't be saved. The buyer backed out, and the insurance payout barely covered anything. Fixing it wasn't an option. In the end, Bobby handed the boat over to someone who could strip it for parts and walked away. For most people, that would have been the moment they called it quits. Another sailor reached out with an idea, though. They needed help getting a 50-foot bento named White Squall from Vancouver to Thailand. The route would take them south through Mexico's coast, then across the Pacific to French Polynesia, Tonga, Fiji, and eventually into Southeast Asia. It would take months. Bobby took up the offer, but the trip wasn't exactly smooth sailing. Gear broke constantly. Throttle cables, electronics, autopilots, one thing after another. Long stretches of rough ocean wore down the whole crew. Still, they made it to Thailand by August 2018. and the channel saw a noticeable jump in viewership. Sailing Doodles had quietly turned into his full-time job. The day Hurricane Maria destroyed rough seas left its mark on Bobby. It changed the way he looked at the ocean, reminding him that sometimes the sea decides for you. In late 2020, Bobby was out at sea again on a 56-foot catamaran named Nowy Dogs, following the North Carolina coast. He was sailing alone, keeping a steady pace when things started to go wrong. At some point, the anchor shifted and got tangled in the propeller, causing the engine to stop running. With everything pushed to its limit, part of the transmission overheated and smoke began filling the cabin before he even realized what was happening. Soon, a fire broke out and Bobby was able to get a call out for help, and the Coast Guard arrived to get him off the boat. He was fine, but the catamaran Nowy Dogs took serious damage. The fire, smoke, and even the water used to fight the flames left it badly damaged. Getting her fixed later cost far more than he'd planned, and the insurance barely covered any of it. When he talked about the incident afterward, he admitted it was a reminder of how quickly small mistakes can stack up when you're out there on your own. That same year, Bobby took another hit. Maverick, one of the two Labradoodles who'd been part of his early sailing videos, passed away after a stretch of illness. The other dog, Goose, went to stay with Bobby's parents in Texas since the constant travel had become too much. But the ocean wasn't done testing him yet. His biggest setback was still to come. Bobby had always dreamed of creating his own unique boat, and in 2024, he finally took delivery of his custom Island Spirit 525e hybrid catamaran from Thailand. It was fitted with electric motors, lithium batteries, and solar panels, a lightweight design built for long-distance cruising. After years of chasing the ideal boat, he believed this was the one that could finally go the distance. However, the hope didn't last long. Only 2 days into the trip from Thailand to Singapore, fuel contamination forced the crew to stop. They set off again on December 17, but a suspected shaft seal issue allowed water to creep in. By December 19, the cannabis drive system had shorted. The crew tried to anchor near a rivermouth to sort out the problems, but the hook didn't hold. The catamaran washed ashore in heavy surf and stayed there for 2 brutal nights, hammered by waves. The aftermath was ugly. Salt water destroyed the electronics. The generator was ruined. Lithium batteries were soaked, but unbelievably they didn't catch fire. The hull held, but the interior was wrecked. After 2 weeks, salvors used floats to pull the boat off the beach and tow it to a yard. Marine surveyors eventually called it what it was, a total loss. Bobby posted a video titled, "Wrecked. My new boat is totaled." Sounding stunned that his dream build had lasted only days. February brought another hit. A tornado ripped through the yard where the boat was sitting, tearing into it again before anyone had even figured out repairs. The insurance process dragged on. Bobby waited, stuck between what he'd planned and what he actually had. It felt like the ocean or fate was daring him to quit. And it wouldn't be the first time his heart had been broken. One of the crew members on that White Squall delivery back in 2017 was Laura, a traveling ICU nurse he'd first met in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Her background working with stroke patients provided a natural starting point for their conversations. The two kept talking. What began on Laura's part as simple curiosity gradually became something more. And before long, she was helping on camera and settling into life aboard the boat. For nearly 2 years, the two shared videos of their journey as they sailed across the Pacific. Laura seemed to take on most of the day-to-day stuff. Camera work, chart watching, keeping things organized, leaving Bobby mostly worried about actually moving the boat from one place to the next. Viewers immediately noticed how calm she seemed when gear failed or plans changed. She added order to the floating workshop that was Bobby's world. But life aboard a moving boat isn't always kind. Repairs piled up, schedules fell apart, and days blurred into weeks with no corner to retreat to. Filming every step for an audience only added more pressure. After a while, the constant motion stopped feeling exciting and started to feel tiring. By 2020, they decided to go their separate ways. There wasn't a dramatic fight or some hidden feud. The lifestyle itself created the strain. After leaving the boat, Laura launched her own channel, later choosing a more settled routine. Bobby doesn't say much about the breakup, and when asked, he usually shifts the conversation to the work on his boat. Still, Bobby rebuilt what he could and brought new people aboard. But fresh faces brought new challenges, and not every voyage ended the way it started. After Laura's departure, Sailing Doodles adopted a rotating crew format. Bobby would bring people aboard for stretches of the journey. Sometimes friends, sometimes fans who reached out online. Many were young women, which added fresh energy to the videos, but also sparked speculation. Early contributors like Megan Binkley and Taylor Francis had helped establish the channel's tone, but frequent crew changes soon became a pattern. Stephanie joined after Laura left and stayed for a while, but her emotional goodbye in July 2023 left fans wondering what happened. Amanda Zachary appeared in videos over different periods. Others came through for shorter stints. Alina Ekimamenia, Clarice, Evelyn. Departures often happen suddenly, fueling online gossip. In July 2025, new crew members Mackenzie, Madison, and Evelyn left shortly after arriving in the Abacos. Bobby cited homesickness and personality clashes. Online forums exploded with speculation. Reddit threads and sailing communities dissected every departure with anonymous allegations surfacing about discomfort, boundary issues, and unmet expectations. Some accused Bobby of inappropriate behavior or exploiting attractive crew for views. Bobby addressed the negativity in podcasts, insisting he selects crew based on enthusiasm and comfort on camera, not romantic interest. He framed most departures as mutual, tied to the stress of confined living and unpredictable boat life. Former crew member Sydney publicly defended him, praising his professionalism and the skills she gained. Others stayed silent. The frequent departures reshaped the channel from group adventures to more solo content, but the rumors never fully disappeared. Afterward, Bobby tried a new approach, something he thought was easier. The constant crew changes hit Bobby harder than he expected. By 2021, he was worn out from the daily grind. The endless work with the canvas and the non-stop adjusting of sails and rigging day after day, it drained him. Bobby eventually shifted gears, buying a Hatteras 60 motor yacht he jokingly called the Dark Side. The name fit. He traded the romance of sailing for the simplicity of just pushing a lever forward. Later, he added a CRA 340 to his fleet, perfect for exploring the shallow bays of the Bahamas. At first, it felt freeing. No sail trim, no constant tweaking, just point the bow and go. Bobby embraced the change and treated it as an experiment. The boat was quick and comfortable, but after a few seasons, the rhythm became too familiar. What once felt rewarding started to feel tiring. He missed the quiet pull of the wind and the small victories that come with trimming sails just right. By August 2024, he told viewers he was ready to sell the Dark Side and get back to sailing. He ordered a new Island Spirit 525E hybrid electric sailing catamaran. His goal was simple, to use modern electric systems and solar power, but still keep the feeling of real sailing. However, that didn't work. The whole detour taught him something he already suspected. Gadgets can make life easier, but they can't replace the soul of sailing. But he kept filming, kept moving. Then came Amanda, a bright spot in the storm. Of all the crew who cycled through the channel, Amanda Zachary stood out. She'd appeared in videos as far back as 2017, then returned as Bobby's partner in 2023. Viewers became attached to her pretty quickly. She had a light, upbeat way of talking that made the videos feel more fun. For roughly a year and a half, they made their way through the Caribbean, recording life on the boat and gathering fans who were just as interested in their chemistry as the sailing itself. By early 2025, though, things had shifted. In a February video titled, "We're Splitting Up, Not Clickbait," they announced their separation. They described it as friendly. But the tension went deeper than that. Bobby, now nearing 50 years old, was craving some sort of anchor, a home base, fewer long crossings, and a bit more routine. Amanda wasn't in that place. She wanted to stay on the move, explore, and live without the commitments that come with settling down. The difference wasn't about affection so much as direction. After parting ways, Amanda started her own YouTube channel under her name and kept sailing solo. Bobby remained in the Bahamas, throwing himself back into filming and maintenance. During a podcast a month later, he admitted that the lifestyle can be isolating, that dating while constantly on the move often feels impossible. As months went by, online discussions questioned whether Bobby blurred the line between work and relationships. He didn't respond publicly. Long gaps between uploads over the summer fueled speculation. By October 2025, he was back to sailing solo, seemingly comfortable with the calm. When Bobby's stroke ended his aviation career, he never expected YouTube to become his financial lifeline. By 2025, Sailing Doodles wasn't just a hobby channel anymore. The audience had climbed past 717,000 subscribers, with total views pushing well over 451 million. On YouTube alone, monthly income swings depending on views, usually a few thousand, sometimes reaching 4,000 in the busiest months. The real boost comes from elsewhere. Brand deals, Patreon supporters, and the merch his viewers keep buying. When you put it all together, people who track creator earnings estimate he brings in somewhere in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. Each year, brand deals also play a part, including working with companies like Highfield Boats. He sells shirts, hats, and other small items through his website, all carrying the Sailing Doodles branding. And a portion of his audience supports him on Patreon for early videos, extra clips, and more personal check-ins. He added a podcast a few years back, and it's grown into a steady part of how he earns a living. Episodes such as Sailing, Heartbreak, and the future of Sailing Doodles draw large audiences, giving Bobby room to talk about the parts of his life that don't always fit into a weekly video. After years of chasing repairs, storms, and stories, Bobby's journey started to mean more than just views. He began passing along what the ocean had taught him. Bobby has never tried to sell himself as some kind of guru, but after 8 years living on the water full-time, he's picked up plenty worth passing along. On his Podia page, he offers reasonably priced courses on topics like full-time cruising, how to cross oceans safely, and basic care for hybrid-powered boats. Much of the material comes straight from his own experience, including the mistakes he's made along the way. He's also shared what he knows at public events. At a 2021 fundraiser hosted by the Salty Dog Sailing Association, Bobby talked through the parts of cruising most people don't see. How much it costs to keep a boat moving, the gear you really need on board, and what long stretches at sea actually feel like. In another seminar titled Cruising Life Costs and Lifestyle, he broke down things like stretching a food budget and choosing between single-hull and twin-hull designs. On his podcast, those topics come back as listener questions. Common errors new sailor make. How relationships change when two people live in tight quarters. And the mental toll of months spent away from routine. One theme tends to surface whenever he speaks. Don't wait too long to chase the dream. His stroke took his career overnight. And he often points out that not everything can be put on hold until retirement. Sometimes you either go now or you never go at all. He's not the type to run big charity campaigns, but he has pitched in when he can. Back in 2020, he passed his damaged boat to a friend to rebuild and sell, and the money went towards small community causes. From time to time, he's taken part in local fundraisers and used his audience to remind people to treat the water responsibly. None of it is loud or branded. It's a steady kind of contribution, helping new sailors find their footing, offering what he's learned, and showing by example rather than chasing attention. At 48, Bobby White is still out on the water, operating mainly out of the Bahamas. For now, he's living aboard his power boat, Naughty Dogs, while insurance companies sort through the paperwork, and he waits on plans for a replacement catamaran. Recent uploads show him moving through the Abacos, and he's hinted at runs to Colombia, St. Martin, and stops along the U.S. East Coast. He's spent time chartering in Greece as well, filming life in the Mediterranean. Those videos consistently draw 6F-figure view counts. If anything, the channel has picked up speed. He posts new episodes each week, and the audience continues to show up. The podcast keeps growing, too, with conversations about mishaps at sea, managing relationships on a boat, and practical how-to discussions. He's broadened his topics over time, covering how much it realistically costs to cruise each month. According to Bobby, prices range between $1,500 to $5,000 depending on where you are. He also reviews navigation software like Windy, Predict Wind, and Garmin Navionics. He's even talked about staying healthy when land is far behind you. These days, he's on his own more often than not. Old crew members such as Clarice or Alina will sometimes join for a stretch, but the dynamic has changed. He's learned to live with the calm. The people who come aboard eventually move on, but the ocean,